Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started quick by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Howdy.
Ruben Bressler.
I'm timing the intro with my washing of my hands, like our Twitter follower suggested.
Oh, that was brilliant.
That was pretty dope. That was very nice.
No joke, that is how I've been timing how I'm washing my hands.
Oh.
Now, I'm legitimately doing it. And yes, I am honking at the end of every single time, whether Aaron wants me to or not.
That's true. I like to be consistent. You know what I mean? I like to have a thing that it's just that familiarity I think is important, and people like to hear that stuff.
Yeah, and it's better than the stupid birthday song.
I've seen a couple versions of that meme. There was the intro from Buffy of in each generation a Slayer is born. Mm-hmm. I've seen there was a speech from Drag Race of like, if I want a sugar daddy, I can get a sugar daddy. I've seen that one. Nicki Minaj's verse from Monster was one of them. Like there have been some really neat takes on that.
I was doing the Avatar: The Last Airbender intro for a minute because when the world needed him most, he vanished, etc.
Awesome.
Oh, man.
We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent in letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 color hosers. Ruben?
Well, the most popular comment on the YouTube this week is also one of the most luxuriant, extensive, prolific. There we go. But it's also a very good comment and tells a pretty interesting story. Marcus the Absolute writes, as someone who started with Magic around the invasion block, where colors were everything and hate was a way of life, I still shudder at the moment of one of my friends deciding that since I was pretty much 50% of what he played against in our little group, he's going to hose me. And hose me he did. I am a black mage at heart, and he loves white. So that rat bastard started putting 4 copies of Crusading Knight into his deck. The audacity. Soon our little game sessions devolved into who hates the other person more. I responded with Marauding Knights because I, as a black mage, have no shame. He started removing planes from his deck and putting in non-basics so that his night kills me faster. Plus, he was playing white, so he had access to life gain. Things were going poorly for me, but he wasn't done. Oh no, far from it. He was slinging Obsidian Acolytes, Northern Paladins. Why are the Black Paladins so much worse than the white ones, by the way? No justice in the world. I was hopelessly out-hosed and out-hated. Massacres weren't doing the trick. I had to evolve, which is where my pick for the hosiest of hosers comes in. Out of the blue, pun intended, I splashed in Islands, pun intended, and I put in Washout.
Oh, yeah.
I still remember the expression on my friend's face when basic Islands started appearing on the table in what he thought was a mono black deck. And come turn 6, I bounced his entire board for 4 mana and started beating him up mercilessly. It was on that day that we declared a ceasefire, and I was never color bullied again. When in doubt, wash it out.
Yeah, I think that's in my boyfriend's Blind Seer deck where you can sort of turn those hosers into any color and like Douse can suddenly just counter anything for 2 blue mana. Like it's just an obnoxious card.
For those who don't know, Washout did show up originally in Invasion as an uncommon. It was a blue and 3 generic mana for a sorcery that says return all permanents of the color of your choice to their owner's hand.
Yep, I had a friend in college who had a color changing commander deck with things like Shifting Sky and all the color changers to be able to take advantage. And Washout was a huge blowout.
Very nice. Congratulations to Marcus the Absolute. Please contact Erin on social media before she blocks you on all of them. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week. And maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate. Yeah. So speaking of, we get to talk about Shamans, the shaman. The
Shamans, shamans, shamans.
40, there were over 400 choices. Many of these were cards that I've seen and just didn't know they were. Tassigur's a shaman? Did anyone know that?
I know.
It's just like there were
there's a bunch of weird ones that are shamans.
Really good cards, really historic cards, the cards that have been around for a while that were shamans. Very pleasantly surprised he was on that list.
I think there's multiple categories and we're just going to get there at some point. Like where we need to go back and do 10 more shamans, but like I'm totally okay with that because I totally have 10 more I could talk about. Shamans are great. There's a ton out there. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about our favorite shams. Shimmy talking about number 10. Ruben, what's number 10?
My number 10 is a card that has won a Pro Tour, as I am often want to do on this list. Mm-hmm. It's got 3 printings. 2 of them were in their original printing in Alliances, where it was a summon cleric.
Ooh,
now, these days it's a human cleric shaman. But yeah, it's a very weird card. There were 2 of it in Ole Rade's Spiders deck, that red-green aggro deck. My number 10 is Storm Shaman.
Oh
man.
Storm Shaman is 2 colorless and a red for an 0/4 human cleric shaman with fire breathing, which means pay red mana. Storm Shaman gets +1/+0 until end of turn. 4 toughness for 3 mana means that you can stand in front of a lot of stuff on your opponent's sides of the board. As the game goes on, it's a good mana sink. Always good to have a good mana sink in any deck, even if you only have 18 lands like Ole had. It's a Pro Tour champion, so you got to harken back.
It's a good Magic card. Now look, it's a good Magic card in the realm of which it was printed. Look, back when the rocks were soft and I was playing in standard tournament F&Ms and stuff, this is the type of card you were like, I can just pour as much mana as I want in this thing. Like, you could get excited about stuff like that because there weren't a million 0/4s with different abilities or a bunch of fire breathing cards that you had to compare it to. There was fire breathing the enchantment, and then there was like this thing just had it tacked on. Yep. So that in and of itself gave it, at least that much more interesting power level of what we were dealing with at the time, which was really bad.
And it survived Incinerate, which was a huge deal for a 3-drop, and it survived your Pyroclasms, which was huge for red creatures. So it was, it was a product of its time, obviously, but it was pretty good.
For its time, it was still an awesome shaman. That's great. Aaron, what's number 10?
Evan's going to love this one because we're going to Kamigawa.
Yeah!
So this is a card that has been an all-star in my Rakdos the Showstopper EDH deck. I'd never even heard of the deck up until, 6 months, the card until about 6 months ago, and I just love it. It's so weird. It does exactly what I want to do, and it even feeds into a possible win condition. My number 10 is Bloodspeaker. So Bloodspeaker is 3 colorless and a black. It's an Ogre Shaman from Champions of Kamigawa with 3 power and 2 toughness. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice Bloodspeaker. If you do, search your library for a demon card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand, and then you shuffle your library. And then, whenever a demon comes into play under your control, return Bloodspeaker from your graveyard to your hand. So you have this recurring, literal demonic tutor that can just go searching for demons. And so my Rakdos the Showstopper deck is a tribal demon deck. I'm running over a dozen demons. And I also run Liliana's Mastery. And so it just gets you closer. That clock keeps ticking of just get yourself 4 demons and get them to stick. And if you put enough demons on the board, you have a pretty good chance of untapping and winning the game with that. And I have won twice with Liliana's Mastery now, in no small part because of this card. It's just fantastic.
That's awesome.
And for those who don't know, Liliana's Mastery is 2 black, 3 generic mana.
Or no, I'm sorry, Liliana's Contract. I apologize.
Oh, Liliana's Contract. Oh, my apologies.
Right.
Because I was like, I don't remember exactly.
Mastery is the zombies.
Liliana's Contract is kind of a tidings. 2 black, 3 generic mana for a rare enchantment from M19. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards and you lose 4 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game.
Mm-hmm. And this thing will help you just get more.
Now, have you won a game with the Liliana's 4 demons?
Well, Grizzlebrand's banned in Commander. So Grizzlebrand's not on the table. But no, I've done it with a nice mix. I run Bells and Lock. That's really the only one. I don't run Razaketh, I don't run Kothafed, and I don't run Grizzlebrand. So,
gotcha.
But I did win a game with with Bells and Lock before.
That's nice.
Right. Now,
that's flavorful.
Yeah.
Right. So back in the day, well, first of all, Kamigawa, right? Right here in the heart. There were 2 uncommon demons in Champions of Kamigawa that were not specifically, but basically tailored to make this combo work. Gut-Wrencher Oni was a 5 mana 5/4 trampler that at the beginning of your upkeep, you discarded a card if you didn't control an ogre. So you just got this ogre back to play it, so that would happen.
Right.
And there was another Painracker Oni, which was a 5 mana 5/4 with fear. That means it can only be blocked by artifact creatures and black creatures. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature if you don't control an ogre. So that one was a little harder to block, but it had a much higher drawback because creatures sucked terribly back then.
And you needed ogres.
There were quite a few ogre demon synergies in Kamigawa. Yes. I seem to recall a couple cards that are like, if you have one, get rid of the other. And another one of my favorite weird cards from Kamigawa is Mark of the Oni.
Yep.
Like, let's give black a mind control for 3 converted mana costs. Like, what?
And also, don't forget that historically, ogres and swamps are tied together through the classic movie Shrek.
As they should be. Mark of the Oni, one last here, is a black.
Get out of my swamp.
A black and 2 generic mana for an uncommon enchant creature. You control enchanted creature, but at end of turn, if you control no demons, sacrifice Mark of the Oni. So
it's so good.
it's good. Like, back in the day, it would set you up for problems when they would bounce your guy or whatever. But like, it's fine. It's fine. It's a cool card.
It's fun. It's very fun.
It is very, very fun, which is appreciated. My number 10 is not. It's funny how this card's like shimmer has gone down so significantly. This was a card that was worth a ton of money at one point in time, and over time has just gotten cheaper and gotten more and more. So there's been 3 printings now, and I'm guessing that was the magic number for this card. So not only is it not played that much anymore, it's been printed enough to where I think there's enough essentially copies to sate the market because, and I believe, if I recall correctly, this is one of, if not the final artwork that features RK Post.
Oh.
And that would be Fulminator Mage.
Oh.
Fulminator Mage is a 2 black-red hybrid and a generic mana, so that's 3 mana total, for a 2/2 rare elemental shaman that says sacrifice Fulminator Mage : destroy target non-basic land. At one point in time, this was like a $50 card. Like, they had only printed it in Shadowmoor, couldn't find it anywhere else. It was the thing you needed to get rid of, the Raging Ravines or whatever was going on in Modern
Living
at
End
the
was
time.
running 4?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now nobody's running it, and I don't really see it much anymore at all.
Willie Edel, in fact, just won the Modern Challenge this past weekend with Jund, of all things, and is running Pillage in the sideboard instead of this, and is very clear about the fact that that is intentional, and that Pillage, in his mind, is better than Fulminator right now. Like, what?
Because Pillage shocks them when it hits the non-basic land, which is great.
No, that's Molten Rain.
Yep.
Oh, that's Molten Rain. I'm sorry.
Pillage
Pillage artifact or land.
Pillage
right?
hits artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Artifact.
Well, there's a decks running around. Yeah.
That's true. And so, in Fulminator Mage, again, it's just one of those things where the lands have gotten a little less important, and maybe the artifacts have gotten far more important.
And Jund hasn't been overwhelmingly good the last couple of years. Like, it's fine. Like, Jund will always be a fine choice, but there haven't been any decks that have really come out that really need that many. You know, Tron's been kind of kept down for the most part. I mean, we have Eldrazi Tron now, which is the thing, but, you know, no one's really playing Living End. Jund is fine. Those were really the 2 decks that really liked this card, and if they're, you know, below the threshold, you're going to see less of that.
Yeah, last showed up in Ultimate Masters, and that's the last time I saw it. Let's move on here to number 9. Ruben, what's your number 9?
Speaking of Jund, this time talking about Standard Jund, one of the most popular sideboard cards in the day. Because the mana bases in Jund were so ridiculous, you needed sprouting Thrynax mana on turn 3, so you had things like Savage Lands and Raging Ravines and a whole bunch of things. Destroying non-basic lands, boy, that was something I could sign up for. And if you could also play this card against decks that used Celestial Colonnade, all the better. And so my number 9 is Goblin Ruin Blast.
Woohoo!
Goblin Rune Blaster is 2 colorless and a red for a 2/1 Goblin Shaman. It has Kicker of 1 red mana, which means that you may pay an additional red as you cast the spell for a total of 4. It has Haste, and if you kicked it, when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-basic land. Yeah. This was very popular in Jund sideboards of many different types, but also was in the sideboard of Andre Quambra's world's-winning Naya Lightsaber deck. It was just a really solid card. It was able to pressure planeswalkers with that haste. You could pick off one of their lands. It was just a really, really, really good card, and now it's back in Historic with the Historic Anthology 2 on Magic Arena.
Nice.
Yeah, Naya Lightsaber, the one with has 4 forests in it. Was kind of
That's
the joke.
One, is that the one that we make fun of all the time?
I think it's the one
it
is.
I've heard I seem to recall it being something we've laughed at before.
Yeah, it's 4. It has 4 turn 1 green sources and 4 noble hierarchs. And 4 wild Nacatls.
And 4 wild Nacatls.
Jesus.
It's just full of like sun petal groves and stuff. Like you can't play on turn 1. It's just okay, kind of silly, but whatever. Ruin Blaster also included in the Historic Anthology 2 just recently in MTG Arena. This was one of the cards they said it was why Field of the Dead is okay in Historic on Arena, is because now you have Ruin Blaster.
Hey.
This was a hell of a card back in the day. This saw a ton of play because it did exactly what you want to do. Killed that Raging Ravine, like was able to get in there for 2, which was nice for the red deck. And it always felt good to get that extra value out of your sort of 3 mana 2/1 haste guy, which is awesome. Turn into 4 mana 2/1 haste guy. Aaron, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is one of the finishers in my Muldrotha EDH deck, which has been getting a lot of love on Twitter lately. Somebody had even responded to one of my tweets and said that I've encouraged him to play Muldrotha because he feels like the deck has a lot of stigma around it, and I'm really glad to hear that. And this is one of the ways that the deck can just go completely over the top. My number 9 is Mazarek, Crawl Death Priest. So Mazarek is 3 colorless, a black and a green. He's a legendary creature insect shaman with 2 power and 2 toughness and flying. And he says, whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Now, this is any player.
What in the world?
This gets out of hand.
I've never seen this card.
This gets out of hand very, very quickly. If you play it by itself, there are a lot of infinite combos that you can do with this. I tend to not go that route when playing Commander, so I like this as just a way to turn all of my little mana dorks, all of my, my crappy little Worm Harvest tokens into really, really big threats. And my Muldrotha deck plays a lot of permanents because that's what you want to do with Muldrotha. So I have the things like the fonts, I have the capsules, I'm running Merciless Executioner and Fleshbag Marauder. So I'm doing a lot of sacrificing, and it really doesn't take a lot to get this thing going. And this is every creature. And so before you know it, this itself is a very big threat. And all these little mana dorks that you use just to get you to your mid game are now 4/4 Yavimaya Grangers and 5/5. And it's just a great card and just one of my favorite finishers.
You know, if this was a 4/4 with Vigilance instead of that other ability, it would be just the 5 mana black green 4/4 flying Vigilance from the Great Designer Search that will forever live in infamy, which is ridiculous. Mazarek,
all you have to do is sacrifice 2 permanents.
Yes.
To make it a 4/4, and then we can give it Vigilance some other way. So
some other way. It'll be okay. And then you've done it. You put it all together.
Yeah.
And then suddenly Wizards was right about it. Mazarek in and of itself, this card looks dope. This is the cool toys that I would like to play with in a constructed environment that isn't Commander, or at least Brawl. Like, could you give it to us in Brawl and Commander on Arena? That would be nice. This is exactly the type of card you build around. This is awesome.
Yeah.
That card's dope. My number 9 is higher on someone else's list, but it's really good. So that's okay. I really, really love that card a lot. Let's head a move here to number 8. And as we skip me, I'll kick this one off. I really enjoy my number 8. This card has only seen 2 printings. Not the most expensive thing in the world, but definitely was a force and standard, was super duper fun, was based on a card that is busted in half. Once upon a time, you could play 3 different versions of the same deck. You could play aggro Survival of the Fittest, combo Survival of the Fittest, or control Survival of the Fittest. Well, now you have Fauna Shaman.
Yes.
That showed up in Magic 2011 and later in Historic Masters. Fauna Shaman is a green and generic mana for a 2/2 rare elf shaman, and it has 1 green, tap, discard a creature card, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This card is a powerhouse in and of itself. It gives you that tutoring power. It's okay to wait a turn for it. It's still absolutely terrific, and it saw a ton of play for as long as it was in Standard.
Yeah. And also saw play in Legacy. When Survival was legal, you wanted to just have more survivals in your deck, particularly because you could go get them with your survivals.
Yeah.
Just in case your opponent had a Wax and Wane or what is it? Wear and Tear. Wear and Tear is the one that sees play.
Right.
Or saw play. But yeah, I mean, Fauna Shaman was a powerhouse when it was printed. It harkened back to a very classic card. Still a powerhouse in Cube as far as I'm aware. And just a really good, really fun card.
Yeah, this card seems absolutely terrific in Commanders, Cubes, all around the world. And again, back in the day, it was like, I just got a survival more than you survival.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself was just such a weird time that just warped everything. It was crazy. Ruben, what's your number 8?
My number 8, Aaron spoiled a little bit, but it's Tasigur, the Golden Fang.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's all right.
It's all right. You were right. It's kind of surprising that Tasigur, the Golden Fang is a human shaman, originally printed in Fate Reforged and became an Ultimate Masters box topper later on. 6 mana, but we aren't paying retail, for a 4/5, 5 colorless and a black. And it has Delve, which means that each card you exile from your graveyard while casting the spell pays for a colorless. It also has the ability of 2 Simic mana, either a green or a blue, and 2 colorless, so 4 mana total. Put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, then return a non-land card of an opponent's choice from your graveyard to your hand. This card saw a ton of play in Standard, obviously. It also has continued to see play in the older formats. It won a Pro Tour in the hands of Ben Hall in the Hollow One deck of the Team Pro Tour in Minneapolis.
Nice.
It is just it's a 1-mana 4/5 in a lot of cases. It's come close to winning other Pro Tours and is the Dimir Inverter card of choice a lot of the time as well. Yeah. So it's still seeing play to this day.
Yeah, and the delve ability really sets you up to get the most out of its activated ability. So you can delve all the garbage, you can delve all the things that you either don't want to bring back or can't bring back, and really just leave the tastiest bits there for your opponent to give you. And not only is a 4 or 5 body just really good by itself, it gives you some defense or some walls against the aggressor decks, but it really allows you to play this sort of grindy, late game and to play like a blue mage and just really kind of stay untapped. And, if there's nothing you have to answer, fine, I'll just go ahead and get some insane card advantage off of this.
I think along the way, as the game now is, some odd 27 years old or whatever, there's definitely been kind of sort of, different lines in the sand and different kind of thresholds that Wizards has passed throughout the years. And Tasigur the Golden Fang, to me, was definitely one of those, pushes. This card is pushed. This card can be played as 1 mana 4/5 that then has a ridiculous amount of card advantage stapled right on top of it.
Yep.
It didn't take much for this card to see play. This card is awesome. I loved it.
And it did win. It won back-to-back major Standard events. It won Worlds in 2015 in the hands of Seth Manfield. Mm-hmm. And then 2 months later, Kazuyuki Takimura won Pro Tour Battle for Zendikar.
Wow.
Both with Abzan.
Yeah, and this is just the power of this card. The fact that its activated ability is hybrid mana is just that's just
crazy.
Far and away how crazy good this thing is. It could have been made you pay green, or it could have made you play a green and a blue, for example, just to kind of make you kind of work for it a little bit. But no, man, they're giving it to you all that and then some. You get that and the bag of chips, as it were. It's a free bag, Aaron. Just take the bag of chips.
It's a bag of chips.
Thank you.
Nothing wrong with the bag of chips.
You guys know I struggle with pronouncing words because I'm from Wisconsin.
Bag of chips.
I have to try. I have to wrap my mouth. Bag.
And I'm over here going bag. Hey y'all, get your bag of chips.
Same bag.
Bag. Aaron, what's number 8?
My number 8 is another one of my favorite cards from my Muldrotha EDH deck. It's also an all-star in other EDH decks as well, such as Lord Windgrace. You can put it in the Gitrog monster. You can put it in Titania. You can put it in Sidisi. Any deck that revolves around the graveyard and has a good chance of putting lands in the graveyard is going to want this card. My number 8 is World Shaper. So World Shaper was originally printed in Rivals of Ixalan. It is 3 colorless and a green. It is a creature-type merfolk shaman with 3 power and 3 toughness. It goes for about $2 to $3 right now. It says whenever World Shaper attacks, you may put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. And then when it dies, you can put all land cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. So it kind of has that reclamation attached to it. And so this is something you're very okay with dying. And so there have been times where I've played this and then killed it myself just to sort of get the effect. I've negotiated with people where it's like, hey, can you block this for me?
Right.
And there's just so many neat ways you can play this fairly, or you can absolutely abuse it. And I just love the way, people like to kind of rib on Ixalan or Rivals for not being particularly good. But one thing I think that set or that block did very well is the way they reimagined Merfolk, where, they didn't just give us a bunch of blue Merfolk with a bunch of +1/+1 lords. We got green, we got explore, we got Kumena and ways to sort of redo the engine. And this is one of my favorite Merfolk from that block.
I made a shocked face because I'm pretty sure somewhere in my stuff I have a pre-release promo World Shaper still in the plastic.
Yeah,
I never took it because, what am I going to do with it? I was like, this is garbage. I'll put it in a box.
4 mana 3/3, nice.
Is it a burn spell?
Saw no play.
0.
But it's popular now, and it's like $6 for the foil. Cool. I probably have a $6 bill. Hiding in a box somewhere.
How about that? Look, this is World Shaper is the exact type of weirdo card that will come out of nowhere and do exactly what you wanted to do.
Right.
Example would be Grinding Station, where Grinding Station completely broke in half with Underworld. What was
Breach.
it? Underworld Breach. Thank you. Because just what it does works perfectly with that. Someday there's going to be something that's going to put a bunch of lands in your graveyard. You're going to get them back on the battlefield somehow, and this guy's worth like $100. sucks because you just can't find that weird effect anywhere else.
And that's one of my favorite things about this game, like about Magic as a whole, is when things just happen naturally and your card becomes good again. Like, I remember when Bridgevine was becoming popular and Bridge from Below became like a $40 card. And I was just like, am I playing good cards? And Brian Kibler kind of goes to that. We joke about him being sort of the Dragon Master and, the Pro Tours that he misses because his favorite deck is not viable. But when it is, and everything just kind of loops around and the stars align, it feels amazing.
You say that, but then Inverter of Truths happen. And it's like, really? Do we really want the random garbage to come out of nowhere and be good?
One person's garbage,
Yeah, I love it.
Like,
I may not like facing it, but I like that the phenomenon happens.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah. I appreciate the pet deck aspect of those weirdo kind of cards.
You appreciate the petty?
We will move to number 7. Ruben, what's number 7?
My number 7 is a card that is very near and dear to my heart. It dominated now kids, pay attention.
Here we go.
There used to be a format called Extended.
Oh.
And this card dominated Old Extended for a good long time. And I'm not really sure why it dominated Extended. I'm pretty sure it was just because a lot of people played the deck. Mm-hmm. And like when a lot of the tournament plays a deck, it has a better chance of winning. But there were a lot of the times where I would play a turn 1 Treefolk Harbinger.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd go get me a Doran the Siege Tower.
Yeah.
Have me a good time. Doran the Siege Tower is a white, a black, and a green for a legendary creature, Treefolk Shaman. He is an 0/5. And each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. This harkens to the fact that Treefolk are stout, hardy individuals with thick bark and strong branches and roots and big butts, and this allowed you to turn that strength into its offense. We've seen this ability on a number of other cards: Belligerent Pontodon, Arcades the Strategist, Assault Formation, High Alert, Huatley. But Doran was the first. Doran was the one that did it, and also you could go turn 1 birds, turn 2 5/5 essentially. And also this ruined your opponent's plans. If they had 2/1s, they dealt damage like they were 1/1s. And so your opponent's Hellspark Elementals only dealt you a damage. And so Doran was not only an offensive weapon, but a defensive weapon. Doran Rock also won Worlds in 2007 in the hands of Uri Peleg, the first Israeli world champion, beating Patrick Chapin in the finals. And Doran was a big part of that picture.
Yeah, I was right there for that one. We were both there for that one, which was fun. 2007 was when this guy first showed up. There's an awesome story from Aaron Forsyth where they were just having lunch and they're like, what are we supposed to do to this guy? How is this guy supposed to be interesting? And someone just said, he assigns his combat damage equal to his toughness. And he was like, that's terrific. Let's do that. And that gave Treefolk in general, a real reason to have super high toughnesses and to be able to give, them kind of a very sort of unique flavor that really resonated in Lorwyn. And also, these are the types of things where when you have turn 2 Doran, which you could do with Birds of Paradise, you also have things like Journey to Nowhere, which is an amazing removal spell, which they have still not reprinted so many years from now. Like they'll only put it in like dual decks and commander decks. And it's like, could we just please?
Yeah.
And also regarding Extended, one of my favorite Magic shows I ever made was titled Everyone Hates Extended. Everybody hates Extended because, it was just, no one liked playing it, but we were kind of forced to all the time.
Yeah, exactly. This was the time before Modern. This was kind of why Modern got invented, as a matter of fact, because nobody liked Extended. We'll add that Doran did make the top 128 of the MTG bracket.
Ooh.
Made it one of the 128 most beloved Magic cards of all time, as voted on by you, the fans.
Awesome.
Very nice. I have like 20,000 cards these days.
That's right.
Crazy. Aaron, what's number 7?
My number 7 is a really important piece of my She-Ray Shizu's Caretaker EDH deck. When you're playing any sort of aristocrat strategy, whether it be, Korvath or whether it be Teysa or whatever, you want to get the most value out of your creatures. And there's nothing better than sacrificing a creature and then getting a creature for your trouble. And one of the best cards that helps you do that is my number 7, which is Pawn of Ulamog. So Pawn of Ulamog is 1 colorless and 2 black. It's a creature type vampire shaman, originally printed in Rise of the Eldrazi, with 2 power and 2 toughness. It says whenever it or another non-token creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may put a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token, that's a lot, onto the battlefield. It also has, and then that spawn has sacrifice this creature, add 1 colorless to your mana pool. So if you've got a sack outlet and you have a blood artist, for example, you can go whoop, whoop, whoop. You'll get tokens for doing that, and you sacrifice the tokens to your sack outlet, and you get more blood artist triggers. You get more whatever triggers you're going for, whether it lets you draw cards or whether it lets you drain. And that you can also just ramp if you just need raw colorless mana. You can also do that too if you're waiting to do something at instant speed or if you need to fuel something else. And, at 3, 3 really is just a great spot in the curve to like get this out there, and really get the most value out of your creatures. And if I'm playing any sort of black aristocrat strategy, I'm never leaving home without this card.
They've printed it 3 times, and it's like a $3 card even after, and it's just uncommon. It's not like they made it rare or anything.
It's so good.
And it's a $9 foil because the only foil you can get is from Rise of the Eldrazi from way back in the day.
There you go.
This card was like super highly rated because, when you go through these lists, I try to do things like, sort by price, sort by EDH rec. And I was like, wow, this card is like the 4th or 5th, on the EDH rec list.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does this card do again? I'm like, I guess that's pretty cool. That seems really neat. And no wonder it's got such high value.
So good.
Which is awesome. Let's see here. Time for the Fatty Boom Booms. Okay, we're here at number 7. It's time to drop the hammer. It's time to do something crazy.
Is it ever not time for the Fatty Boom Booms?
See also the pre-show.
I was just going to say, as Ken Nagel used to say, I always like the fatties.
Always like the fatties. Let me tell you. And
that's from the Magic Show, Aaron. Calm down.
Yes. It's great. And this is a card that was, as I recall, it was very, very expensive until they finally reprinted it, and then they reprinted it again. But the card itself was also a Cube All-Star, which I absolutely loved. This originally showed up in Shadowmoor, and it really showed the power of Persist, because Woodfall Primus, as a big boy, as a large gentleman, 3 green mana and 5 generic mana for 8 total, 8 mana, 6/6. A rare Treefolk Shaman that has trample. But when it comes into play, you destroy target non-creature permanent. And it has Persist, because why not? When this creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to play under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. So you have a 6/6 trample that kills like a Planeswalker, for example, which were very new at the time. Yep. Or you get their enchantment or whatever removed, and it comes back as a 5/5 trampler that, again, it gets that ability again to destroy another non-land permanent. This card was super dope, super cool. Still sees play in cubes to this day. I've seen it, and is still a casual all-star.
Yeah, really good with sack outlets when you can cheat it into play with things like Sneak Attack or Shifty Doppelganger or the card Flash. I've seen this thing flashed in. Where you get it to come in, it triggers, it dies, it persists, it kills something else, and stays around as a 5/5. You probably could have given me a lot of guesses, and I would not have guessed that this was a shaman.
It's true. It would have taken a lot of guesses for me to get there. Do note that even as soon as Magic Fest Calgary 2019, this was in the first place Jund Breach Titan deck.
Jeez.
Which in and of itself is pretty cool. There's one in the main deck right there. Woodfall Primus. Who knew? So that's pretty
through the breach, destroy your land.
Yep, get you. Tell you what. We want here to number 6. Ruben, what's number 6?
My number 6 is a card that, again, this one won a Pro Tour, although I will say it was in the sideboard of Simon Gertzen's Pro Tour San Diego Jund list. Another Jund All-Star, just one of the mid-rangiest creatures of all time, another Cube All-Star, insanely powerful and extremely flavorful. My number 6 is Master of the Wild Hunt.
Nice.
Ooh. 2 colorless and 2 green mana gets you a 3/3 human shaman. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. And it has the following ability. Tap all untapped wolf creatures you control. Each wolf tapped this way deals damage equal to its power to target creature. That creature deals damage equal to its power, divided as its controller chooses among any number of those wolves.
So it's fight.
So it's sort of like fight. It's like an evenly distributed fight between the pack of wolves. Mm-hmm. It's like if you banded your wolf pack together and then it fought.
Yeah.
But yes, this was easily able to pick off opposing 2/2s every turn if you needed it to. If you had this and 2 wolves on the board, your opponent couldn't combo you out with Splinter Twin, which was nice. Yeah, this thing did everything. I mean, it was an army in a can. It was board control. It was just, it's just a spectacularly good card.
It has a fantastic story behind it. If you cut to Worlds in 2009, I believe it was, maybe it's 2008. Anyway, Pro Tour champion Charles Gindy had Master of the Wild Hunt out. And along with a pair of wolf tokens, one a 2/2, another a 3/3 because of Orin Reef the Vastwood. I'll let you look that one up. He activated his Master of the Wild Hunt, targeting one of his opponent's creatures in order to kill it. His wolves were tapped, and his opponent's creature was killed by the 5 damage from the Hunt's ability. But the opponent did not assign damage back to either wolf. Now, at the end of the match, after the match was over, Gindy asked his opponent why they had not assigned damage to kill one of Gindy's wolf tokens, as the ability resolved. This made it clear that Gindy knew that one of his wolf tokens had been assigned damage, but it chose not to say anything at the appropriate time, and kaboom!
Well, or he realized it later.
Was he DQ'd?
He was DQ'd from that turn. Yeah. When you say a fantastic story, I don't know if fantastic is the word I'd use to describe it.
Infamous is a better word. Fantastic in the, like, it is just above and beyond what you would expect to happen, which is, it just came out of nowhere because, again, it was at the end of the match.
Yeah.
If Charles had just packed up his stuff, put the thing in the deck box and went on his way, he'd have been just fine with the win.
I mean, and that's a pretty infamous story. Yeah.
Right. And the infamous in that, and the fact that the opponent made a big deal out of it, and then here comes the judges and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly it was fraud because he wasn't, showing it correctly or whatever. It was crazy.
That got ridiculous quick.
It was one of those like 1 hour long judge calls at the time. And everyone's like, what the hell's going on? And all of a sudden Charles is like, I'm DQ'd. And you're like, what?
Right.
What?
And since then, I mean, Charles has had nothing but he's a peachy keen cherry of a human. And so that one was obviously a bit of an aberration, but it is an infamous story.
Right. Knowing Gindy as long as I have, he's a good dude. He was, he would ask that question if he wasn't a good dude, right? So period. Master of the Wild Hunt is terrific. I love this creature. This is one of those creatures that, like, I can't believe they've only printed it 2 times. Like, really? This card's great. Like, this seems like a casual all-star. I mean, it is. It's $6 for a reason. But either way, terrific. All right. So, Aaron, what's your number 6?
Last year, I was fortunate enough to be picked to participate in the Ravnica Allegiance pre-release with our friends over at Loading Ready Run. And that was really where I first started my foray into being a Rakdos guild mage. I'd never really played with red cards before, but I was really leaning into it. I really love what they did with the Rakdos in that set and that block. And my number 6 is one of the cards that I loved in my deck. I felt like it put on a lot of good camera time. And I will always have a place in my heart for Fireblade Artist. So Fireblade Artist is a black and a red. It's a creature type human shaman, 2 power and 2 toughness, with haste, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, Fireblade Artist deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So I was playing a deck that I called Holding Out for a Hero, which really revolved around Hero of Precinct 1, and a Mardu deck with a lot of multicolored spells that would trigger the hero. And so I was able to play an early game of just sort of getting in there with little 1/1s and 2/2s, but when the mid game would begin, people started having blockers, and I realized that I needed a way to get in there still. And so being able to just sacrifice these creatures to the Fireblade Artist and dome them for 2, pass the turn, make another one, dome you for 2, and just sort of create these standoffs with this card. And that was just the way that I was able to get over their heads, and that was the way that I was able to win games. And I love the flavor, beautiful art by Steve Argyle, but just a lot of fond memories of just creating this engine of tokens and feeding it to this thing. And it was amazing.
I remember watching your first game with that deck where you're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to go okay. I think this was against Shivam. And you're like, I don't know. And then you played a turn 2 hero and then played a turn 3. I think it was Fireblade Artist and Footlight Fiend. And it was just like, well, this game went well. We did okay this game. Right. This game was fine. Just attacking for 1 million on turn 4 or whatever.
like this is the card that Dreadhorde Butcher essentially put to bed, as it were.
Yeah.
But for its time, in that little brief window, the Rakdos aggro was 100% running for Fireblade Artist rather, because it was a terrific way to close out the game. Like,
you can even run both though, can't you? Like sacrifice
you can run them both.
to that.
Sure.
I mean,
absolutely, but it's also just one of those cards that I think just people have forgotten about. Quite frankly, I was like, oh yeah, this card is in standard. I've totally forgotten it's still here.
We've seen even various Rakdos sacrifice lists, and I don't even think they're running this. And it's like, what? It's Rakdos and it's sacrifices.
Well, most of the Rakdos sacrifice-ers you can do like in response to stuff.
Yeah,
that's so.
Don't have to wait for your turn to come around and blah blah blah. But this card is dope. I really love Fireblood Harvest. It's great. I don't really want this next creature, my number 6, to be reprinted. It's okay. It don't. Did it? What? I'm just letting you know. I don't want this one to come back.
Go on.
It only showed up 2 times. Once in the Mystery Booster, once in Mirrored and Besieged. This card is annoying. This card is like literally annoying. This is the card that I feel like broke the hexproof back. I mean, like Bogle is one thing, but this one to me was just like, okay, all right, Wizards, are you really going to push hexproof?
Yeah.
Are you really going to take Thun the Last Troll and have Thrun just be the best friggin' thing?
Card.
Oh my god, this card's so annoying. Thrun the Last Troll is a mythic rare from Mirrored and Besieged. It's 2 green, 2 generic mana for a 4/4 mythic legendary troll shaman. It can't be countered. It was later eroded to have hexproof. This creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. And for a green and generic mana, you can regenerate from the Last Troll, which if it would die, it doesn't die, and it comes into play tapped instead and taking lethal damage. Regeneration's dumb. They don't use it anymore. But it was one of the reasons, again, both hexproof and regeneration kind of died on the back of Thrun the Last Troll. And it
now
can
you have
stay
to give
there.
it some context. If I remember correctly, this card came out as a response to the Delver decks that were really good at the time. Yes. And so, you needed something that couldn't be bounced with all the Vapor Snags and all the other nonsense. Mm-hmm. And you needed something that could reasonably fight with, a Geist-Sustain Traff or whatever other nonsense they had going on. And so it did have its place. It wasn't like they just dropped it into an unsuspecting metagame and said, go nuts. It was a godsend for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was definitely a tool, right? It was
I've played a lot of Thruns.
A lot of Thruns in the world, and there were ways to give it trample and stuff, which was a thing. And
I always just put equipment on it. I played a lot of Maverick. Thrun the Last Troll, highly played in Legacy as a one-of, because you could go get it with your Green Sun Zenith. It also won a Pro Tour, obviously. Brian Kibler. Kessig Run, winning Pro Tour Dark Ascension with Thrun. Cube All-Star as well. Just like maybe the most popular troll in Magic, actually.
There could be many options there. Played as recently as 2018 in some classics and in a Modern Open in Dallas in March of 2018.
Jund usually always finds room for one in their sideboards.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the kind of creature, well, nowadays, I guess they have a questing beast in this kind of slot where you want to have your one of Green Sun Zenith target for 4. But like Thrun lives in that little space.
Right. The idea that you couldn't counter it, which was Mana Leak was a problem, you couldn't bounce it because Vapor Snag was a problem, was a nice thing. But at the end of the day, this was one of those cards that like I could not wait for this card to rotate by the end of it. I was like, just get out. Get it.
This is like the fairest, though.
It's fairly fair. Okay.
It's pretty fair.
It's fine.
I mean, Hexproof's not fair in any way, shape, or form, but whatever.
Let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, what's number 5?
My number 5 is one of 2 hires on my list.
Ooh, Aaron, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is one of my favorite cards ever. It's been printed almost a dozen times, if Scryfall is correct. It just does what it does very well. It's one of those cards that I need no excuse to play. Like, if you ever see me playing a deck, and you're like, you know what your deck needs? This card. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to be like, oh, you're absolutely right. I'm going to put it in here. It's just so good. And the thing is, we probably won't ever see anything as good as this again. My number 5 is Vampire Nighthawk. So Vampire Nighthawk is 1 colorless and 2 black. It's a creature type vampire shaman with 2 power and 3 toughness. Was originally printed in Zendikar with flying, death touch, and lifelink. That's it. That's the tweet. I played this. It was in standard for a brief period recently, a couple of years ago, back when I think Innistrad Return to Ravnica standard was around. And so I played this in the black-green rock decks. It's a great speed bump against the aggressive decks. If it sticks, you can give a burn deck fits, because I think most of the burn spells around that time were like 2. I think having 3 was not that common. And so there were times where this thing would just sort of run away with the game. And it's a nightmare for the aggressive decks. It can get in some early damage against against the control decks. It's just so good at what it does. It's just this really great speed bump. You know, that classic art of the vampire just kind of chilling out there with the beautiful art of the moon. Jason Chan really killed this one, and I need no excuse to play a Vampire Nighthawk. I'm always looking for a reason to play one.
Like, it's great that at this point, I've been on Twitter since like 2006 or whatever. So like I can go back and literally, thank you. I mold the rocks, you see. And you can go all the way back to where I responded the first time I saw Vampire Nighthawk. I was just like, oh my God, the value in this card is insane. Mm-hmm. We had, at that point, I mean, like literally got nothing close to this, like, you know, bopped about 3 awesome abilities for just 3 mana in this black of all colors. This was a big
paradigm shift for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, 3 good abilities. Like, they didn't just staple on some random other, like, flash and can't be and haste, like, at the same time. Like, who cares? Right. Vigilance, lifelink, death touch was
flying.
Flying, lifelink, death touch. Boy, that's just a lot for one creature.
Good. It just does everything you want to do. It's got a higher toughness.
This was a shaman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, what a weird one. They staple shaman onto some weird cards.
They do. They make shamans. They kind of seem like they'll just throw it around. Yeah. You can be a shaman if you want to.
Right.
You can leave your friends
behind. You can leave your friends behind.
That's right. See, I was already there with you, buddy. Number 5 for me. This is cracking the top 5. This is the big 5. Oh. Can't just be just anybody.
Cracking open a top 5 with the...
That's right. You get that top 5 in there. You got to really take cards that I think sort of really define what shaman means. Some of the best shamans ever. The shamans that can drive their own archetypes. The shamans that can be lauded and sort of referred to. And there's just, you know, there's a subset of cards. I would probably say maybe 1,000 to 1,200 cards or so that you'll either know by the name of, or you'll know exactly how it works and what it does in some fashion. And that's just kind of how Magic works if you've been around a long time. And I know this is definitely one of them, because this card is fantastic. It has kind of fallen a little out of favor recently. I'd honestly sort of defer to Aaron about this, because I think it saw a lot of play in the past couple of years in Vintage, because there's only one small shaman that can make this big impact.
Nope.
Not old, but young. Pyromancer.
Oh, Peasy. I thought you were saying Deathrite Shaman. I'm like, don't.
Young Peasy.
Young Peasy. Young Pyromancer is a red and a generic mana for a 2/1 uncommon human shaman that says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 red elemental creature token.
Yeah, I don't remember this making a big splash in Standard. You know, Ruben, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Made a little bit, but yeah, it was not the most popular thing in Standard. I mean, where it really shined was Modern and older formats.
Yeah, Modern. I mean, you had Mardu Pyromancer, which took a couple of years to get going, but that was a thing for like 6 months. And then, you know, Legacy, this has been a natural fit in the Delver decks and the Grixis Delver decks, so the Blue-Red Delver decks. In Vintage, you know, you can do a lot of things in Vintage, but there are still people out there that want nothing more than to play a young Pyromancer and a bunch of free spells and have a good time. And you can pair this with Cabal Therapy if you're feeling particularly frisky. That's a very common thing you see people do. But it's just so good for it. It doesn't take much to get going. And it spirals out of control very, very quickly.
As recently as March of last year, was in Blue-Red Delver in a Legacy Open.
Yep.
As recently as October of 2019 was in Is It Delver.
Yeah, like a lot of broken cards, it's good because you don't have to try. You know, like a lot of people look at this and be like, oh, I need to jam my deck. You can just play a fair blue game of Magic of, you know, end of turn brainstorm. Whoop, there you go. Oh, you're going to do this? Well, I'll daze that. Like, you don't even have to go out of your way. And that's what makes this card so good. It's just playing normal Magic gets this thing going.
Young Pyromancer and also related to Seasoned Pyromancer, which is also a shaman.
Why is he seasoned? Because he's tasty.
Because he's spicy. Because he's a snack. You understand? He's a snack. Just eat him up.
Well, both of them are quite good. Both of them saw a bunch of play in, is it Phoenix? Mm-hmm. And Modern Pyromancer, obviously. And
And Ely Cassis won with him in Oakland 2019, just last year.
There you go.
Blue-Red Phoenix, which is awesome. Let's move on here to number 4. Ruben, what's number 4?
My number 4 is the most expensive shaman in Magic, and it's not particularly close.
What?
Also made the top 128 of the Magic bracket, is an all-star in the cube. Also was a big piece of a Pro Tour winning deck. My number 4 is Oracle of Moldiah.
Oh, yeah.
Oracle of Moldiah is 3 colorless and a green for an elf shaman. a rare from Zendikar, and that's it. That's
the tweet. God.
You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library if the land card. A big part of getting out Primeval Titans and other giant 6-drops, the long illustrious history of exploration effects, and Oracle of Moldiah, to this day, one of the most popular and indelible shamans in Magic history.
Like a $40 card?
Like $35, yeah.
Desperately needs
second place. Any guesses? We haven't said it yet.
I've cheated, so I won't say.
Oh, okay.
For what it's worth, it's not on, I don't think it's on any of our lists.
Ophiomancer.
Yeah, that's another one, which they still don't have a snake token for, Ethan Fleischer.
Still don't have a token, that's right. Ethan Fleischer, if you are listening, sir, come on. You work there. You make the cards.
Wow. Number 3 most expensive, Vexing Shusher.
Ooh.
Number 4 most expensive, Reki, the History of Kamigawa. So, okay.
All right. Okay. Oracle Moldiah was my number 9 that I referred to earlier. This is like Wizards. All right. So look, Wizards wants to imagine that the secondary market doesn't exist. And this past year or so, they realized, hey, you understand that there are like literally millions of dollars out there that you could earn from the secondary market. So they started making these secret lair packages or whatever. Yep. So they could sell you the shiny cardboard directly. And Oracle Moldiah is this card that very few cards slip into, where Wizards just can't reprint it the right way. Yeah. Quote unquote, the right way. This should have been in a Masters set like a dozen times already. This should have been in like Masters 25, which was an absolutely god-awful Masters set. It should have been in there. This should have been in something, but they can't do it. So they don't want to put it in something like a dual deck because it's worth too much, even though they totally don't pay attention to the secondary market. And it can't be in just like a standard set because the effect is super duper powerful. And you don't necessarily want this effect to be in standard all the time. And I mean, it's in modern. Do you want it in Pioneer? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the type of card that ramps you into silliness. If nothing else, just casual players love this card.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
I mean, at this point, it's all Commander. So
yeah, 100% Commander. This is one of those that, yes, when you reprint it, it's not going to be a $35 card anymore. It'll be like, what, an $8 to $10 card or whatever, because it's a supply problem. This is just a supply problem. But this is an awesome, awesome card. I love this card. I wish they would reprint it just so we could have another version. That would be nice. Like, maybe they're doing it for that Commander Green thing this year. That would be pretty fun. See if that works out. Aaron, what's number 4?
It's more likely that it's in the Commander Green thing than Fetch Lands coming back.
Hey. Do you know how many tweets I got tagged in after that announcement?
It was just Pi Day, so I had to bring it up.
So my number 4 just recently came out in a very recent block and is a really neat take on black removal. As a black mage, sometimes you run the risk of your removal being dead, which really, really feels bad, where, you're either running a deck full of creature removal and you get paired up against a control deck and you have no targets, or you bring in a bunch of duresses and then the control player brings in some creatures and then you feel real dumb because you boarded out all your removal. This creature doesn't have that problem. There will always be something to do. It will always find something to hit, and so you don't feel bad about including it in your black decks. I love it. I have it in my Muldrotha deck. I have it in my She-Ray deck. I just can't get enough of it. My number 4 is Plaguecrafter. So Plaguecrafter is 2 colorless and a black. It's a creature type human shaman from Guilds of Ravnica, 3 power and 2 toughness. It says when Plaguecrafter enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Planeswalker! An edict on planeswalkers is massive. And then if they don't have either of those things, it's okay, because each player who can't discards a card. So it's very likely that you're going to take something. And so I played this in the Golgari Citadel decks, for that ETB trigger. And if you have a way to blink this, I also played this in the Gruesome Menagerie decks. If you're playing with Blood for Bones or anything with any sort of recursion, you can really manipulate those ETB triggers. But just an edict that hits planeswalkers and removal that is very rarely dead on a body, a good 3/2 body, no less, is nothing to cry about and is a very, very good card.
There was a point where Wizards was like, we're going to take these creatures and we're going to go to 11. We're going to push these things hard. We're going to make it so exciting to read these new Magic cards. I would put dollars to donuts, money on the line, that last sentence, each player who can't discards a card, was not on there until they decided, you know what? let's just push a little bit.
Right.
Let's go a little bit. Because no, it says can't. It doesn't mean you get to choose to discard a card, because of course you probably would to save your planeswalker or whatever. No. If you can't, you're still getting that value. This creature is always good. It's never a dead draw, and that's exactly the way they wanted it, and that's why this card is amazing.
That's the insult added to the injury. This is one of the more popular ways to answer a Teferi time, the 3-mana one, that Time Raveler.
Time Raveler.
Because they bounce your one thing, and then they're like, haha, now I have a Teferi, and you're just like, haha, here's a Plague Craft.
Oh, people walked into it so many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, this card was absolutely terrific, and I love Plague Crafter. Speaking of cards that I love, this is definitely one of them for my number 4. There are few sets as impacting, and in a whole variety of ways, in terms of the history of Magic and what was so important at the time and how they had to sort of throw all the chips on the table and be like, Alliances is going to be one of the best sets of all time for a variety of reasons, whether it was weird mechanical stuff, whether it was the pitch spell stuff, whether it was just sort of these different cards that did different things. And one of the cards that they had on there, and one of the cards that honestly struggles to see print online, because it was made in Alliances, therefore it wasn't necessarily in Magic Online to start with, so I had to come in via like a promo and stuff. But I love me a Mox Monkey. Back in the day, this was not called Gorilla Shaman. This was called the Mox Monkey. Because it would eat your Moxes for a mana apiece. Gorilla Shaman is awesome. It is a common from Alliances for 1 red mana. It is a 1/1 creature ape shaman. It used to be a summon gorilla. Now it's a ape shaman. For 1 generic mana, X generic mana, X generic mana. So for 1 mana : you can destroy a 0 mana artifact. So the ability is XX1 : destroy target non-creature artifact with converted mana cost X. So 1 mana, chomp down a Mox. 1 mana, chomp down a Chalice of the Void. 1 mana, get rid of their engineer explosives. Like, there was all sorts of ways and means. 1 mana, get rid of their artifact lands, for example.
Mana crypts.
This card was absolutely terrific and remains fantastic in Pauper to this day.
And I remember it being kind of controversial because it was a late inclusion to Magic Online, I believe, where, it was one of those cards that they kept, they were releasing those chests. They were trying to, put some supply out there for that demand. And one of the most popular cards that people are like, can you please just give us a Gorilla Shaman?
Because they were so expensive. It was one of those cards that is like, most cards don't have a supply problem online, but every once in a while, there was a minute there where Pernicious Deeds were like 50 tickets, and Mox Monkey's another.
Right. To this day, it's anywhere from $4.50 to $6 per copy online. You can get a paper copy for about 40 cents.
Yep.
And maybe cheaper if you find it in a bulk box somewhere. Because it also has 2 printings. It has 2 different artworks. That was a thing they used to do back in Alliances, back in the older sets, where they'd have different artworks for the same card in the same set. And so you had 2 different options, and I always liked the screaming one. I was like, come get you.
This was also in Ole Rade's Pro Tour winning red-green spiders aggro kind of deck.
Excellent. Yeah, I love me a Gorilla Shaman. It's fantastic. Let's move on here to our number 3. My number 3 is higher on someone else's list, but it's really good, so that's okay.
It better be if it's higher.
I know, right? Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3, so one of the things that I look at when trying to decide what my top 10 lists are is the card banned in a format? And while this card hasn't been banned itself in a format, it has gotten another card banned in a format. It also is in the cube because of this combo that it was a part of. Flashing all the way back to Old Extended, once again, back when Hexmage Depths was a thing. Vampire Hexmage is my number 3. Vampire Hexmage is black for a 2/1 Vampire Shaman. She does have first strike and sacrifice Vampire Hexmage : remove all counters from target permanent. Reprinted in Conspiracy, Commander 2014, and most recently the Mystery Booster. This was like the original way they thought black was going to be able to answer Planeswalkers. Is you could remove all of the counters from your opponent's Derek or a Johnny or whatever. Back when that was a thing that black couldn't do before Hero's Downfall and Murderous Rider and all that. But it turns out the best thing that you could do with Vampire Hexmage is remove 10 ice counters from Dark Depths, and thereby unleashing Merit-Lage, the 2020 flying indestructible beast from beneath the ice.
Yeah.
Like, Go ahead.
Oh, just saying, it's so good. And there's just so many uses for it that you don't even realize, when you're playing it. And, I can't dog on it too hard. There is some sideboard tech in Vintage Dredge where you transition into a lands deck. And I can't tell you how many times I've got people with this card where they're just like, oh, I got a Grafdigger's Cage. I'm like, that's fine. And then you just do that. You're like, whoop. So good. And it gives you bridge triggers. So if you're really feeling desperate, you can throw some bridges in the yard, or you can also use them to exile somebody else's bridges. So definitely remember that. It goes both ways.
Yeah, it can target any permanent you like.
Yeah.
This was back when, Black had no way of answering Planeswalkers. I remember asking Wizards, I was like, are we going to see destroy target Planeswalker? And they were just like, hee, just like run away or whatever. It was ridiculous. And I was just like, you could just say, yeah, man, it's okay. Because back then it was, honestly, Planeswalkers were this weird new thing that, had just been in like a set or two. And like, is it actually going to work out? Are these going to be good enough or more interesting enough to continue to be the sort of stars of Magic? Turns out. But Vampire Hexmage in and of itself was terrific. That card and that deck, this was Jerry Thompson's Dark Depths Hexmage combo deck and extended. That thing was so stupidly good. I played that deck in a Pro Tour qualifier back then. And as I recall correctly, that is the same event where I met John Medina, who has now gone on to do all sorts of things with the Magic community for the first time. So that was really cool. Yeah, but Vampire Hexmage is a fantastic card and immediately slotted in the cube, if nothing else, to give Black an answer back then because it didn't have any. It had nothing. It was like, I hope you got a good aggressive creature in Black.
And as a red mage, I hate seeing it because it's a 2-power first striker.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
How dare you?
Yeah, just got good power, good combat ability on it. It's very good.
Yeah. Good stats. Aaron, what's number 3?
My number 3 is a card that has brought me a lot of joy in my day. When I'm not talking about dead things, I'm talking about enchantments. I love Enchantress strategies, and I won a game day a while back thanks to this card. If you're playing any sort of green enchantment strategy, you absolutely want this card on your side. My number 3 is Herald of the Pantheon. So Herald of the Pantheon is 1 colorless and a green. It's a creature type Centaur Shaman with 2 power and 2 toughness. Was originally printed in Magic Origins. It says enchantment spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast. And then whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life. So this card came in towards the tail end of Theros block. So, we really only had kind of like, sometimes you have those summers where all the sets are legal and Wizards is like, all right, you can have all the toys and then come fall, you're going to lose them all. So, for a while there was this really lean kind of green-white enchantment deck that you could play with Nyx's Fleece Ram and this and Sigil of the Empty Throne. And I just ran away with those games. I won a game day with it. I, took down several FNMs with it. I had a lot of fun with this. I've tried really hard to make it a thing in Pioneer, which is kind of hard to do actually. But, if you're doing anything with enchantments, you absolutely want this card. It's great against the burn decks because you're just gaining this sort of,
incidental life gain,
which is sort of ahead of its time. You look at the way design is right now, and a lot of cards just sort of have this do things, gain life thing. And so it gets really, really out of hand just by playing Magic. It makes all of your enchantments cheaper, which is really nice as well. And I've had, if you're playing any sort of aggressive strategy, you pair this with like a Nyx's Fleece Ram and most opponents will just scoop. It's hilarious because they'll never outpace you.
Yep, we're good. I mean, at the time, back in 2015 at Grand Prix San Diego, the second place deck was the Obzon Constellation deck. This played 4 Herald of the Pantheon, played 3 Doomwake Giant, played 4 Eidolon of Blossoms.
Absolutely.
It was 4 Brain Maggot. That was a hell of a card.
Now it turns them into 1-mana cards. You throw a bunch of Silk Wraps. Yeah.
I just thought of something hilarious, which is if you tried to combine your 2 loves of dead things and enchantments, I want you to cast Bridge from Below to trigger Constellation.
Oh my god. And then somehow sacrifice it to get another trigger from a different permanent.
Why not?
Let's do it.
I'll cast it to trigger my Doomwake Giant, sack it whatever sacrifices enchantments, trigger my Femaref Enchantress to draw a card.
There you go. Woo. Getting a little hot and spicy up in here.
I don't hate it.
Any excuse to cast a Bridge from Below. That's all I'm looking for.
I can honestly say I've never had the pleasure.
Right?
Never, ever. Not once in all these years.
We got it. We can do it. We can figure this out, everybody.
We can make it work. Ruben, what's number 2?
My number 2, you ready for this? Okay. Higher on someone else's list. It's been a minute since I've had a higher number 2.
Tell you what, Aaron, what's number 2?
I don't play Standard very often. It takes a lot for me to get off the couch and play Standard, and more importantly, it takes a lot for me to stay with Standard. But this card absolutely made me love Standard. I traveled to events with this deck. I had a lot of fun with this deck. I mourned when it left Standard. And she's only been printed one time, and very rightfully so. I haven't quite found a use for her in Commander yet, but I have a lot of fond memories of this card. She's everything I want to be, everything I want to be doing. My number 2 is Sidisi Brood Tyrants.
That's a good one.
So Sidisi is 1 colorless, black, a green, a blue for a 3/3 Naga Shaman legendary creature. Whenever Sidisi enters the battlefield or attacks, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. And then it also says whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So this was a very important part of the Sidisi whip decks, which are very, very popular in Standard at the time. I loved this. You played things like your Satyr Wayfinders. You had a lot of ways to get creatures in the graveyard, and that second ability does not just trigger from her. So any sort of incremental way that you could find to get creature cards in the graveyard would trigger this. You would play Whip of Erebos, so all those 2/2 zombies now have life gain. I used to go toe-to-toe with the Abzan decks and just see who could gain the most life between, they would have Wingmate Rock, they would have their whips, they'd have Siege Rhinos, you would have this, and you would just grind them out. And so I would really, really loved this deck. I had a lot of fond memories of it, and it was just a good time, and one of my favorite Standards ever. Con Standard was just great Standard.
It was fun.
This is like a mini Grave Titan a little bit too.
A little bit something. This was, as I recall, I took a pie bet with Brad Nelson on this one. He won that pie bet, as I was like, this card doesn't do enough, and it doesn't have enough toughness, and it's too many colors, and blah blah blah. But turns out, excuse me, you don't need to have a whole bunch going on in order to make the free creature thing work out in your favor.
It's also got that Titan text of whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks. So it continues to grind out value. And if all you want to be doing is putting stuff into your graveyard, like Aaron Campbell and many others, to feed your whips, feed your nays, and do all those things that you want to do.
I love it.
I do as well. But look, we've talked a lot about my number 2. Okay, there's lots of digital ink spilled. We've talked about it multiple times.
Have we talked a lot about your number 2? Do we need to see a doctor?
Wow.
Sorry.
Sorry. Sometimes they have
that was
only
my...
if you can't number 2.
It's true. Well,
although I would rather be able to number 2 than not be able to at all.
You say you've talked about your number 2 a lot, so your number 2 has good consistency. That's what you're saying.
There's my number 2 is smooth sailing.
Does it have a good curve?
Oh my god.
Is it small or is it big?
Jesus,
is it like a big number 2?
Oh my lord, it's a big number 2. It's a very important number 2.
It's not the size that matters.
Except when you're comparing my number 2 to your number 2. And all I know is
none of this is making the final cut of the show.
Not at all.
Absolutely. But Aaron has gnashed many a teeth over this type of card. I have earned a free meal from one Gerald Thompson.
Yep.
From thanks to this card. I love me a Deathrite Shaman. Deathrite Shaman, the planeswalker that is a creature. It is a Golgari hybrid mana.
The one mana is what it is.
1 mana. I will never get over that. 1 mana for a 1/2 rare elf shaman. Tap : exile target land from a land card from a graveyard. Add 1 mana of any color. Black, tap : exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. Green, tap : exile target creature card from a graveyard. You gain 2 life.
So stupid.
Always good. Always good.
The card does too much.
It's dumb. I can't. What were they thinking?
It's obnoxious. And when you look at how long it was able to go on and the way that it just made mana irrelevant, you know, right before it got banned, Legacy had just started to see these sort of check pile decks. They called it check CZECH because mana just didn't matter anymore. You had decks that were running Leovold and Kolaghan's Command and Wasteland and Daze because why the hell not? And throw in a True Name Nemesis for a really good time, and the way that these decks just sort of became these value decks that didn't really have a theme to them. It was just all about jamming the best cards in the format. And also too, a lot of people like to use the argument of, well, it's just a Bird of Paradise, but this can single-handedly run away with the game. Like you can keep a hand of 2 Deathrite Shamans, a couple lands and maybe like a brainstorm, and you will win the game with that, with the 2 life at a time or the 2 damage at a time. The way that this card kept creature strategies out of Legacy, like when this card got banned, you immediately saw this influx of strategies that had not been allowed to flourish because of this card. And when you look at what it did at Modern, you can't deny that this card is just so good that it kept decks out of the format. It was a very happy day when it was banned.
Yep.
You can really only play it in Vintage now, where it's, doing its thing, and Bug sees a lot of play in Vintage now. The card is just insane. Like, and two toughness. Why?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a laundry list of why.
Immediately removed Goblin Lackey from the format.
Exactly.
Deathrite Shaman was my number 5.
Nice.
Deathrite Shaman, I mean, obviously it has been banned in multiple formats. It caused other cards to get banned. It has won dozens of tournaments. It made Jund the most popular archetype, I think, of any Pro Tour at that Modern Pro Tour that Eggs won, because Sifka played Eggs, and Eggs had a good Jund matchup, and that's why that deck won. Deathrite Shaman's just absurd. Different games of Magic have different things that matter, right? Sometimes speed matters. Sometimes the length of the game matters. Consistency matters. Size matters. Going wide matters. Advantage matters. Different things can matter in different areas of the game. Deathrite Shaman can interact with every single one of them. Speed, consistency, life gain, life loss, racing. It just does everything. Not to mention the fact that being able to go fetch land, underground sea, mana producer is just unreasonable.
It's just ridiculous. And it was never like Bloodbraid Elf paid for the sins of Deathrite Shaman for years?
For a couple of years, yeah.
It was ridiculous. It's like, we can't get rid of this 1-mana 1/2 that does a million things. It's like BS. It can go. It's fine. You can leave now. You've done enough damage. Let's move here to our number 1. Ruben, what's your number 1?
My number 1 has all the things I care about. It's got a Pro Tour win. It's in the cube. It's been in a deck that has had a card banned, and it has a similar effect to the banned card. And it's going to make Evan feel good because it's from Kamigawa.
Hey.
My number 1 is Kikijiki Mirror Breaker. Woo woo. 2 colorless red. That's Jaya Ballard mana. Gets you a legendary creature, Goblin Shaman. It has haste. It is a 2/2. Tap. Create a token that is a copy of target non-legendary creature you control, except it has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Of course, this is most well known in the Splinter Twin archetype. So, by the way, Splinter Twin is banned. Press F in chat. But you basically use either Kiki-Jiki or Splinter Twin to copy Deceiver Exarch or Pestermite or some other number. There's a bunch of iterations of the combo. And you make an infinite number of tiny blue creatures and attack with them all. And that's the tweet. That's the deck.
That's what you do.
And Kiki-Jiki has always been an all-star in birthing pod strategies. It actually was in the Flash deck that Steve Sadin won, because part of that won Grand Prix Columbus 2007 with Hulk Flash, because at the time the Hulk Flash combo needed you to make a bunch of karmic guides and stuff like that. So you could go infinite that way. These days, it's still in all these toolbox decks. It sees a bunch of play in Commander and in Cube. Kiki-Jiki, Mirror Breaker, just a great card.
And I love that original artwork.
I like the original art the best.
The original artwork is so much better, in my opinion, than the latter one, which is like that. You know what? The most recent Kiki-Jiki artwork reminds me of what happens when you look at a Simpsons character straight on, and you're like, that don't look right. That looks really weird. Bart's
kind of
face,
Bowser looking thing.
Yeah, it just looks really odd.
It's like the fat stone guys from Zelda. Forget what those things are called.
Yep. Yeah. But this card was absolutely amazing. God, I wish I had held on to that foil that somebody gave me for free back in the pre-release, because it's worth $92 now, which is nuts, because no one wanted this card back in the day.
Right.
And it's another perfect example, just like that World Shaper we talked about. It needed that one thing that was like, I need a card to do something weird, and it's like, this is the card that does the thing, and it does it at instant speed because it's got haste, and boom, you can win the game just like that, which is awesome. Aaron, what is your number 1?
So my number one might pale in comparison when you look at some of the all-stars that I have on my list, or even the ones that you have on my list. But, when you look at how efficient this card is and in how many decks this card goes into, it sees a lot of modern play. It sees a ton of commander play. It is just great fixing that we do not have anymore. And so when you look at how good the card is, when you look at how flexible it is, when you look at how beloved it is, I couldn't think of any other card I wanted to be my number one than this one. Going back to Kamigawa, y'all. My number one is Sakura Tribe Elder, also known as Steve.
Yeah.
So Sakura Tribe Elder is one colorless and a green. It's a creature type snake shaman with 1 power and 1 toughness. And it's very simple. You just sacrifice it and search your library for a basic land, put that card into play tapped, and then shuffle your library. So you got yourself a good little blocker there that you can throw in front of something big. Corner cases, you can put this in front of a worm coil engine and then sacrifice it before the damage is dealt, and they don't gain the life. So there are neat little ways that you can use this card. It sees a lot of play right now in Modern in the Titan Shift or the Amulet decks as just really, really good ramping. And sometimes you even beat somebody down with your 1/1s. I have it in Muldrotha, of course, in Commander. You can put it in your Marin deck. You can put it in any number of these snake commanders that are out there. But just no one has anything bad about Steve. It's so cute. It's good at what it does. Been reprinted about a dozen times. Goes for like $1. It's just what you can't not love it.
Well deserving. I mean, this one also ticks all the boxes. It's in the cube still. It has a PT win. One of the most popular, beloved cards ever. One of my fondest memories of this card is I messed around with an Abzan hidden stockpile deck in Modern for a little bit while just to have fun. And you don't know value. You don't know value until you put Sakura Tribe Elder down on turn 2. And then put a Journey to Nowhere on it on turn 3. Or Journey to Eternity on it on turn 3. And then you have yourself a good time.
Goodness gracious. This is my number 3. I certainly love a Sakura Tribe Elder. One of my favorite cards. Wizards has essentially as the years have gone on, and because we're able to see Magic move, Magic is more of sort of like, certainly Magic design is more of a pendulum than it is anything that sort of swings back and forth. A pendulum in that sort of hangs over the color wheel and just kind of rotates around a little bit. And there was a point in time in which Wizards was like, we are totally cool with you having a rampant growth effect. A 2 mana, go get a land, put it into play tapped. And they said, we're so cool with it, we're going to give you a creature that has this as an activated ability. However, let's back up a second. Damage was on the stack.
Right.
All right? And damage was on the stack back then. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's hilarious, okay?
It's even better.
It's so crazy. What would happen during combat is you would say, okay, I'm going to attack with so-and-so, I'm going to block with so-and-so, and then you would say damage on the stack, which means even if one of those creatures disappears, the disappeared creature will still deal damage.
Yep.
And there was this other card called Umazawa's Jitte, and you were like... So if I stack the damage and then I sacrifice the blah, 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 do I get the counters if it was stuck to a Sakura Tribe Elder because the damage was stacked and it did happen? It was unbelievably stupid. We are so glad those days are behind us. But at the same time, they took away rampant growth for 10 years just recently. We're talking literally Theros Beyond Death. Wolf Willow Haven did not show up. That was a card that right before Wolf Willow Haven was revealed, I said Wizards doesn't give us rampant growths anymore for some other card or what we were talking about. And then boom.
That's not even a rampant growth. That's just a ramp.
Wild growth? Yeah, sort of a wild growth.
It's a wild growth, not a rampant growth. Yeah.
Right. But, it doesn't have a final land, but it ramps you a mana, right? So it ramps you a mana at 2 mana.
They don't give you Sakura Tribe Elder at 2 mana anymore.
They just don't. And the whole damage on the stack just made it...
Or whatever.
Right. It just made it that much more ridiculous, essentially. But the card is amazing. Absolutely terrific. I love it.
Yeah.
They printed it 1,000,000 times and it's still worth $1 for a reason. Old Steve's going to be with us a long time. Two
Kamigawa cards at number 1, Evan. How happy are you?
I'm pretty pleased, not gonna lie. It's pretty.
And you're the one who doesn't.
I don't. This is one of those cards that, as we went through the list, I just was like, bam, there it is. That's number 1. It was, oftentimes I'll go through things, I'll be like, oh, there's my number 1, and we just work on number 2 through 10 or whatever. And this was definitely one of those times where I was like, oh my God, I can't not give it up. This is a card that they have printed a lot. They have printed a whole bunch of times. They've made promos of it. They've put it in commander decks. They've put it in box toppers. They've put it in ultimate master sets, multiple master sets, multiple dual decks. Goodness gracious. They have printed this card in a ton of places. This card is awesome. This card is much like Sakura Tribe Elder. They stapled one of the best effects in Magic onto a creature.
Yep.
And when they do that, when they have this card called Regrowth, and they wouldn't give you Regrowth. No, they still won't give you Regrowth because it gets instants and sorceries. They'll let you go get permanents all day, but you don't get to get instants and sorceries too, or planeswalkers or whatever. But with Eternal Witness, you now have a body that is respectable. You have an effect which is amazing, and you have a card which is just one of the most lauded and beloved cards in all of Magic.
Yep.
For 2 green and generic mana, Eternal Witness is an uncommon human shaman. It is a 2/1, and when Eternal Witness enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So with 2 Eternal Witnesses, you could loop them. You could obviously do silly things when you're trying to get back big spells you're wanting to blow out your opponent with. They literally printed Eternal Witness alongside Plow Under.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Plow Under is a 5-mana sorcery that puts 2 lands on top of somebody's library. So just imagine 2 lands going to your library, and then they kill their witness, they get it back, and then they do it again. Or when they play a witness. Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, this is something you can Coco into, you can Cord into this. Any of the green tutors that you could pod into it. This was a really popular pod, target. This sees play. I've played this in the Death Cloud decks. It's just a way to sort of get value. Yeah. The card is just incredibly good. I think it even sees play in Legacy. I think the Nick Fit decks play it. I mean, just such a good card. I have it in Muldrotha, obviously. And just so simple. And you look at it and we got Maternal Witness, as I call her, which is Den Protector, that you had to jump through a bit of a hoop for. And so you look at this, you're like, we're just never going to have it this good again.
Correct.
Yeah, this is one of those cards that showed up in 5th Dawn, one of the first sets that Aaron Forsyth worked on. And this is one of those cards that I felt like at the time, they didn't really appreciate it. It's much like Force of Will. Back in the day, no one was like, oh my God, Force of Will, blah, 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 it's one of the greatest counter spells ever. It was just like, it's an uncommon from Alliances, whatever. Yep. This was, it's an uncommon from 5th Dawn. It's good. It's very, very good and very powerful, sure, but it's just a guy. Well, turns out years later, it's still worth like $5 no matter where you find it, because Ewit is awesome.
It is. And this was my number 2. Eternal Witness, does everything you want it to do. It's a great card in Cube. It's a great card in Commander. It's a great card in every format. It was an all-star in Draft. It was an all-star in Standard. It won major tournaments. It has been just, there's nothing, and it's iconic. It's just spectacular.
It's hard to say, that much, and certainly negative about Eternal Witness. It's just fantastic.
And it gives you the excuse to say, can I get a witness whenever you play it? The meme quality of Magic cards cannot be understated. So
that's one of those axes that we have to really look at every card on, as it were. And that was our top 10 shamans. You will see them on screen now for your review.
Should I be washing my hands while you do the outro?
You should definitely. Give me about 20 seconds.
Go ahead. Keep going.
You'll see them on screen now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Honk!
True to form.
Just to make sure that you knew when to stop washing your hands.
Got to keep that meme rolling. Go to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-host, Aaron Campbell, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching or listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes and Spotify. Or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.